Is it permitted for one to live or to visit the country of Egypt? Sounds like a strange question, as why shouldn't one be able to live in Egypt? Many great Yidden lived in the country of Egypt. The Rambam lived in Egypt, as did the Radbaz, as did the Arizal for some point in time, and many other Gdei Yisrael. So it all begins with a number of verses in Scripture which state in the Torah a warning against going back to Egypt. So is written in Shmos 14:13, Dvarim 17:16, and 28:68, for a total of 3 times that it is repeated in the Torah, and in fact is listed as one of the 613 commands, as born in the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvahs 46 and Sefer HaChinuch Mitzvah 500. It is counted as one of the 365 negative commands not to live in Egypt. So the obvious question that comes up is, then how did many Jews throughout the ages live in Egypt? What are the qualifications or reasons behind this prohibition? And does it apply to even visiting? So there are various opinions in Poskim regarding this matter. Some Poskim understand that the reason behind the biblical prohibition against living in Egypt is due to that the Torah did not want us to learn from the evil and twisted ways of the Egyptians, filled with idolatry, immorality, and the like. Accordingly, these Poskim say, being that Sancheriv came along and mixed up all the nations, the nation of abomination that used to live there is no longer there, and therefore the prohibition has ceased to exist. So rules the Smag, Mitzvah 22, and so is an opinion brought in the Ritva Yuma 38a. Other reasons recorded in Rishonim for why today the prohibition no longer applies is that it only applied at times that all the Jewish people lived in Eretz Yisrael, in which case the Torah prohibited one from going to a land of depravity and the like. However, today that in any event will live in exile outside of the land of Israel, there's no difference in law regarding one area or another within the diaspora, and therefore one may go to Egypt. So writes the Ritva. Rabbeinu Bechaya writes, similar to the first explanation, however, saying that perhaps a prohibition only applied to the first generation that lived in Egypt, being that they were a depraved people and not towards their descendants. So you have a number of justifications brought in Rishonim for why today this prohibition of visiting or even living in Egypt no longer applies. However, not everyone agrees. Other Poskim rule that this prohibition against living in Egypt is eternal and thus applies even today. So rules the Rishonim, the Yereim, the Smag, Agos Maiminis, the Ramban, Sefer Kafta V'Ferach, Sefer HaChinuch 500, and so is recorded in the Beis Shmuel and Even Ezer 410. And so is clearly implied from the Rambam, as writes the Aruch HaShulchan and other Poskim. These Rishonim explain the reason that the prohibition is eternal is because it has nothing to do with the people on the land, but with the physical land itself. And they bring a proof from the Gemara in Sukkah, in the Yerushalmi, that the people of Alexandria were punished for living in Alexandria, even though this was after the time of Sancheriv. An alternative reason recorded in the Rishonim for the prohibition is because, in truth, the indigenous Egyptians have never left, and Sancheriv never mixed them up. And they live there till today. They are descendants, and therefore the prohibition applies, even if you hold it's not a problem with the land. Before we go into how we rule in this dispute, we will first discuss some qualifications regarding the stringent opinion, meaning even they agree that in certain scenarios and cases it is permitted to go to Egypt. Some Poskim rule the prohibition only applies when traveling from Eretz Yisrael to Egypt, not when traveling from other lands. So rules the Yereim, the Smag, the Agos Maiminis, the Beis Shmuel, naming the Mordechai, and others. Other Poskim rule the prohibition only applies to one who moves to Egypt for the sake of living there. However, simply visiting the place or living there temporarily, such as for business or to learn or teach Torah, is permitted. So rules the Radbaz, the Aruch HaShulchan, and other Poskim. The Radbaz goes on further and says that if one originally came with intent to be there only temporarily and for whatever reason had to become a permanent resident, he does not transgress any prohibition. So to summarize, we have some Poskim who say there's never a problem to live or visit Egypt today, and other Poskim say the prohibition does apply, but some qualify it only for one who's coming from Eretz Yisrael, and others qualify it to only if you're coming with intent to settle there permanently. Practically, how do we rule? So we find many Gdei Yisrael and God-fearing congregations who lived in Egypt, including the Rambam, the Radbaz, and others. thus relying on one of the poskim recorded above, each according to his reason. Meaning either they held it's mutter or they held it's usher, but they didn't come from Eretz Yisrael, or they held it's usher, but they came with intent not to settle and just to be there temporarily. So in conclusion, it is permitted to come to Egypt for a temporary stay, such as for business, teaching Torah, tourism, journalism, vacation, and any matter of the like. So concludes Ravad Yosef and Yabia Omer, Chavadas in Volume 3, Tshuva 81. However, one who lives in Eretz Yisrael and wants to visit Egypt, here it's a little bit more severe, and may only do so in accordance to those cases that he is allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael for the diaspora. So concludes Shevet HaLevi in Volume 5, Tshuva 173. We'll conclude with a statement brought in the Sefer Kafta B'Ferach in the name of the grandson of the Rambam, that the Rambam would conclude his letters with the statement, the man who transgresses 3 negative commands each day, being, as we said, the Torah prohibits in 3 places, living in Egypt. Nonetheless, there are historians and poskim who contest this statement and reject it as a libel against the Rambam.
Thank you for listening to Shulchanaruchharav.com. Our free services of making Torah knowledge available to the public depends on donors like you. Please help us continue our work through making even a small contribution at Shulchanaruchharav.com under the Daily Halacha Dedication section or in the subscription page. Also, check out our online courses and many sefarim available for purchase that will both enhance your Torah knowledge and help support our work.